Welcome in to the Veiled Archive.
The scream is easy. In the architecture of horror, the scream is a cheap structural tool. It is a reflex. A jump scare requires no intellect to execute and no soul to receive. It merely requires a loud sound and a sudden movement. But the whisper is hard. To frighten a reader without raising your voice, to unsettle them using nothing but the cadence of a sentence and the description of a damp room. That requires a mastery that has largely vanished from the modern shelf. Welcome back to the Veiled Archive. I am your curator. For the past few months, we have been dissecting the loud, the visceral, and the grotesque. We have walked the fleshy corridors of Joshua Bish and dissected the cosmic cruelty of Amphitheater the Gods. But today we pivot. We are opening a dossier on a collection that does not want to hurt you, at least not physically. It wants to haunt you. The book is titled Lilies in the Fog by Ray Witherspoon, a collection of short stories. And if you are a student of the genre, if you believe that horror is an intellectual pursuit rather than just an adrenaline dump, then this is a text you'll fall in love with. We are going to conduct this analysis in three parts. First, we will dissect the quiet horror of the text itself, specifically analyzing the prose technique known as lyrical impressionism. Second, we will look at the noir of the soul, how Witherspoon bridges the gap between the ghost story and the hard-boiled detective novel. And finally, in the third act, we will turn the camera on the industry itself. We will discuss how I found this book, not through an algorithm, but through the review economy, and why the survival of indie anything depends on a specific ethical investment from you, the viewer, the listener, the reader. But first, we must enter the fog. Our first case study from the book is the very first story itself, Shadow of Memory Hill. The collection opens with the short title, Shadow of Memory Hill. From a structural standpoint, we must immediately identify our location within the hegemony. We are firmly planted in Pillar C, the experimental psyche, but with a heavy debt to the Gothic integrators. The protagonist, Noah, is a resident of Holloway Retreat, a former monastery perched above the foggy curves of Ashmere, Maine. Right away, the setting does the heavy lifting, but look at how Witherspoon introduces us to Noah's condition. He does not tell us Noah is crazy. He does not tell us Noah is traumatized. He writes this: "The doctors called it protective disassociation," and he nodded as if they had recognized his coat on a rack. Pause on that image. Recognized his coat on a rack. This is our first clue that we are dealing with a writer who understands object permanence better than he understands emotion. Noah views his own mental illness not as a tragedy, but as an accessory, a coat he wears because the weather requires it. He describes his memory loss like this: "It left neat white squares where the worst sentences should have gone. He could walk around them as around taped-off holes in a sidewalk." This is structural horror. The horror isn't the hole in the sidewalk. The horror is the efficiency with which he walks around it. We are terrified for Noah because he is not terrified for himself. He has accepted the editing of his own life. The plot of Shadow of Memory Hill is deceptively simple. Noah lives in his retreat. He hears a bell that may or may not be ringing. He feels static in his fingers before a storm, but the true antagonist of the story is the prose itself. This brings us to the core literary concept of this episode, lyrical impressionism, and the pathetic fallacy. Pathetic fallacy is a literary term for attributing human emotion to inanimate nature. Usually it is used for romance, the happy sun, the angry clouds, but Witherspoon weaponizes it. Because Noah is numb, because he is disassociated, he cannot feel. So the environment feels for him. Listen to these lines from the text. "The ocean rehearsed its old lines without apology. The storm remembered. So did I. The building sighed in a practiced human way. Do you see the architecture here? The ocean is rehearsing, the building is sighing, the storm is remembering. The world around Noah is teeming with the emotions he has amputated from himself. This creates a claustrophobic feedback loop. He cannot escape his grief because he has evicted it from his body and embedded it into the stones of the monastery. When he looks in the mirror, he describes the reflection as a neighbor you both dislike and rely upon. This is the uncanny valley of the soul. It is a masterclass in showing us a man who has become a ghost long before his heart stops beating. Why does this matter to the modern horror reader? Because we are trained to expect the monster. We are trained to wait for the shadow man to step out of the closet and eat the protagonist. In Shadow of Memory Hill, the shadow man never comes. Instead, we get this chilling resolution. There was neither ghost nor cure nor moral, only a room making room around two people who had decided, without promise, to live with what they had seen. A room making a room, that is haunting. The space itself warping to accommodate the trauma. This story connects directly to the lineage of Shirley Jackson. In The Haunting of Hill House, the house is not haunted by ghosts. It is haunted by the psyche of Eleanor Vance. Witherspoon is tapping into the same blueprint. He is suggesting that the most terrifying thing a human being can do is not to die, but to adapt. Noah adapts that to the static. He adapts to the bell. Adapts to the eyes in the corner. And that adaptation is the horror. It is the acceptance of the unacceptable. This is a bold opening move for a collection. It signals to the reader, put away your expectations of gore. We are doing surgery here, not butchery. If Shadow of Memory Hill was a study in stillness, our second specimen is a study in resistance. We leave the monastery and travel down the coast to the story titled Ashwood Hollow. Here, Ray Witherspoon proves that his command of lyrical impressionism is not a gimmick. It is a lens that can be swapped out. In the first story, the protagonist Noah accepted the editing of his reality. He let the fog swallow him. But in Ashwood Hollow, we meet Dr. Meredith Vale, and Meredith has not come to be swallowed. She has come to perform an autopsy on the past. The premise is classic. A woman returns to her childhood town to investigate the disappearance of a boy named Jamie Harland. But look at how the prose shifts. The poetic sadness of the monastery is gone. In its place, we find something sharper, something cynical. So Witherspoon writes, by the time the fog came down over Ashwood Hollow, the road had already given up being helpful. And later, the house presented itself the way an old insult does, as if it were doing you a favor by repeating something you had hoped had been forgotten. This is psychogeography at its finest. The environment here is not just sad, it is opinionated. The road gives up. The house insults you. This reads less like a ghost story and more like a hard-boiled detective novel. It is Raymond Chandler writing The Haunting of Hill House. The horror is not just the house is haunted, it's that the house is rude. The central conflict of Ashwood Hollow is not death, it is erasure. Meredith discovers that the missing boy, Jamie, was not just lost, he was redacted. Her father, the town doctor, orchestrated a conspiracy of silence to protect the community from the trauma. He told the town, forget is a kind of medicine. The mind makes notes only of what it can bear. This creates a terrifying thematic link back to our first story. In Shadow, forgetting was a survival mechanism, a shield. In Ashwood, forgetting is a weapon, a shovel used to bury the truth. This is what we look for in the Architects of Horror project, thematic integrity. Witherspoon is attacking the same philosophical problem from two different angles. Is it better to survive a lie or be destroyed by the truth? The supernatural elements in this story are subtle but devastating. There is a phone jack with no cord that rings at 7:12 p.m. There is a red toy car that rolls across the floor, inch by inch, reeled in by a thread only the floor could feel. These are not jump scares, they are leaks. The reality Meredith's father constructed, the medicine of forgetting, is wearing off. The truth is leaking through the drywall. The climax of this story is not a confrontation with a ghost, but a conversation with the sheriff, Elby Knox. Elby is the enforcer of the silence. He is the man who helped bury the secret. When Meredith pushes him, he delivers one of the most chilling lines in the entire collection. There are things that live inside, ringing. He isn't talking about the telephone. He is talking about the frequency of guilt. He is talking about the signal that never stops broadcasting, no matter how deep you bury the transmitter. Ashwood Hollow concludes not with a battle, but with a realization. Meredith realizes that you cannot simply reclaim the past. Some things, once erased, leave a scar that is louder than the original wound. The story ends with Eli, the brother of the missing boy, staring at the toy car. He looked at the toy car, which turned its face away. Even the inanimate objects are ashamed. This is the power of Ray Witherspoon's work. He takes the standard tropes of the genre, the haunted house, the cold case, and strips them of their melodrama, leaving only the raw structural bone of human grief. So we have established some of the evidence. We have Shadow of Memory Hill, a masterclass in atmospheric dread. We have Ashwood Hollow, a masterclass in noir-infused structural tension. By all metrics of the hegemony, Lilies in the Fog is a Tier 1 entry. It possesses high concept prose, structural integrity, and thematic depth. And I back that up with my review. Ray Witherspoon's Lilies in the Fog operates as a unified architectural thesis on the nature of reconciliation. Across all 6 stories, the collection rejects the standard genre dynamic of the predator stalking a victim. Instead, from the opening haunt of the shadow over Memory Hill to the final return to sender, the entities function as petitioners seeking audience. The horror here stems not from a threat of violence, but from the crushing weight of unresolved history demanding acknowledgement. It is a dossier of debts that must be paid, creating a tension throughout the anthology that is far more cerebral and enduring than the adrenaline spike of a traditional jump scare. This thematic inversion is delivered through the prose that feels less like a linear narrative and more like the transcription of a fever dream. Witherspoon utilizes a fog mechanic across the entire collection, employing dense, lyrical syntax that deliberately blurs the boundaries between the physical environment and the ethereal plane. The writing forces the reader to navigate a space where logic dissolves, mimicking the disorientation of the characters who wander into these liminal places. It is a masterclass in atmospheric density, proving that the most profound terror often arrives not with a scream, but with a polite, persistent knock in the dark. Why, then, is this book not on the front table of every bookstore in America? Why is Ray Witherspoon not a household name? Because the industry is not designed to sell art. It is designed to sell units. And this brings us to the most critical lesson for the indie author and the indie reader. We need to talk about the iceberg. We have spent the last 15 minutes, roughly, analyzing the soul of Lilies in the Fog. We have dissected its prose and its noir structure, but now we must perform an autopsy of the body of its release. Because the tragedy of the modern era is not that good books aren't being written, it is that they are being buried alive. This brings us to the iceberg theory of volumetric trust. In the indie hegemony, new authors are often seduced by the vanity metric, the sale. They watch their dashboard like day traders, celebrating every time that number ticks up by 1. But this is a structural error. A sale is a transaction. It is burning fuel. You convince a reader to buy, they buy, and the energy is gone. A review is infrastructure. It is a road. It remains on the product page forever, converting future traffic into future readers. Consider the math of the cold start problem. If you run Amazon ads to a book with 200 sales but 0 reviews, your conversion rate will be functionally 0. The algorithm will punish you. You are shouting into a void that charges you for the privilege. But if you prioritize the base of the iceberg, if you secure 50 honest, detailed reviews, you have built a gravity well. You have proven that the book exists in the minds of others, not just on the servers of Amazon. This is not just my opinion. This is the consensus of the industry's most successful architects. Experts like Dollwet, a leading voice in self publishing education, have long argued that the indie author must operate within the discipline of a publisher, not the ego of a writer. The Dollwet paradigm is simple: traffic without trust is just noise. So, how does an author build this trust without begging friends or buying fake praise? You enter the review economy. There are several mechanisms for this. There is Puppy, known for its gamified speed, though some purists argue its velocity can trigger algorithmic suspicion. There is Book Sirens, a fortress of vetted professional readers, ideal for those seeking a specific critical eye. And then there is Book Bounty, the platform where I discovered Ray Witherspoon. I highlight Book Bounty here not as an advertisement, but as a case study in ethics. The greatest danger to a new author is review swapping, the I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine agreement. Amazon's algorithm is a predator, and it hunts for these direct connections. Book Bounty evades this by utilizing a blind pool system. Author A reviews author B. Author B reviews author C. Author C reviews author A. The direct link is severed. The quid pro quo is eliminated. This firms out the obvious manipulation and leaves only the genuine interaction. Ray Witherspoon did not swap for my attention. He earned it by contributing to the pool, trusting that the system would eventually deliver a reader like me to his doorstep. However, we must confront the barrier that turns most authors back at the gate: the cost. These platforms are not free. Book Bounty, for example, is a tiered utility. To access the level of service required to sustain a career, you are looking at an annual investment of roughly $180. I hear the objection constantly in the indie space. I would love to, but I don't have the budget. We need to be honest about this. If you are treating your writing as a diary, then $0 is the correct budget. But if you're treating it as a career or even a serious craft, you must understand that art requires capital. It is not just an investment of time, it is an investment of resource. Think back to our expose on Joshua Bish's The Lady in Flesh. The marketplace is identical to that book's fleshy corridor. There are doors you must pass through to reach the truth of your potential. Those doors do not open with a polite knock. They require a sacrifice of comfort. When an author says, I can't afford the tools to get reviewed, what they are often saying is, I have not prioritized the needs of the book over the wants of the lifestyle. It requires fortitude to look at a $180 price tag and see it not as a loss, but as the fuel required to keep the lights on in your own personal corridor. The options are there. The question is not, can you afford it? The question is, can your book afford for you not to? We began this dossier with a paradox. How does a quiet book survive in a loud world? Ray Witherspoon's Lilies in the Fog is not a book that screams. It relies on the terrifying idea that the world around us remembers our sins better than we do. In Shadow of Memory Hill, we saw a man dissolved by his environment. In Ashwood Hollow, we saw a woman fight to rewrite it. These stories are architectural achievements. They prove that indie horror is not a stepping stone to traditional publishing. It is a laboratory where the genre evolves. But an archive without visitors is just a tomb. This is why the review strategy is not just advice, it is a mandate. If we want books like this to exist, books that challenge us, books that prioritize prose over profit, we must build the infrastructure to support them. To the readers, Lilies in the Fog is a Tier 1 recommendation. It is a slow burn that leaves a scar. To the writers, let this be your case study. Do not shout into the void. Build the echo first. Use the tools available to you to trade trust, not just currency. The fog is lifting, but the memory remains. This has been the Veiled Archive. Read deeply, review honestly, and remember, the ghosts you feed are the ones that stay. And a final note on the architecture of this channel. We have spent the last 15 minutes or so discussing the review economy. The mathematical truth that visibility is a function of engagement. The rule does not apply only to authors like Ray Witherspoon. It applies to this archive as well. The algorithm is a fog. It favors the loud, the fast, and the shallow. It does not naturally understand the value of a 30-minute structural analysis of indie horror. It requires a signal. If you found value in this dossier, if you believe that horror deserves to be treated as high art rather than cheap content, then you must provide that signal. The like is not a vanity metric. It is a mark on the doorframe. It tells the machine that this room is occupied by thinking minds. The subscription is not just a click. It is an enrollment. It is the only way to ensure you are notified when we open the next file. And the comment? That is the echo. Leave a thought below. Tell me, which author should we exhume next? Or simply write, the fog is lifting, to let me know you walked the full path with us today. This channel is an independent construct. It relies on the patronage of its initiates. Strike the bell, just as the bell rang in Memory Hill, to summon the next notification. Help us build the road so others may find their way through the mist. I am the curator, and until the next dossier, the archive is closed. Yeah, like how many more times am I going to say that's enough and the archive is closed for the week, right? I'm still jacked about that gift, that offering from Black Hollow Choir. If you haven't seen that video yet, please check out the song. They reached out to me via email on Friday, and they created a video specific to that just to show my appreciation and thanks for the outreach, and then for that amazing song. I made a video for that yesterday. Please check that out, and please go check out Black Hollow Choir. Um, the soundtrack that they put together for Joshua Bish's The Lady in Flesh is amazing. It's outstanding. And after reading the book, or read the book while you're listening, actually, I don't know. Either way, like the two go hand in hand. It's perfect. And they did the same thing for this channel. It, like I said, it's still in shock and awe. I was not expecting that, and I could not be more thankful. So please check out the video. Go check out their page. Uh, I yeah, I'll have the links probably in the bio, for sure. But absolutely, go check out yesterday's video because all of their information is in that post description. Please check it out. It is so cool. All right. Anyway, this is for real this time. See you next week.